Hey, Alice.
Hey, Alice.
Thanks for joining us here in the void. We're coming at you from beyond. I have one of my best friends with me today, a familiar face here at the Mad Tea Party, um, a mentor, a comrade in arms, among other things, a pirate, engineer, musician, and one of the only surviving true patrons of Music City. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for everything you do.
Hey, it's my pleasure, really.
This will be episode 160,
160.
not counting the 22 book clubs we've done so far.
Yeah.
So thank you for everything you've done, because we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have made it this far without you.
It's one of the longest running projects I've been involved with, especially when you include bands, and it's one of my favorite things I've done. And I still enjoy doing it.
I'm glad. I want anyone who is involved with this to want to be here, Like, I wouldn't want someone to co-host or produce if they didn't like what we were making.
Well, I said that's a key thing especially when musicians are looking for producers to make records. An engineer can give you a good rundown of their education and this and that, and what kind of gear they have or what kind of gear they know how to run. But a producer has to be more than just somebody that knows about what they're doing. They have to know your band and your music and what you're trying to do. It's the same way with TV production, you know, movie production, anything. A producer has to have a certain amount of passion for it to be a quality project. I've turned down offers to produce things because I can't put myself behind them, and I don't feel I'll do them that kind of justice.
Yeah. You said something interesting the other day about how vocals, like singing, are a completely different thing than other instruments, because it's the most vulnerable.
Yeah, well, you're not using an external instrument. I mean, one could say, percussively, you could clap and this and that, and it's one thing, but singing, much like dancing, is it's even beyond. It's like taking public speaking to the next extreme level, where not just you're not just standing up and telling a crowd of people what I have to say is interesting. You're saying what I have to say is so interesting that I can sing it, and I sound so good at singing that you'll be interested in hearing what I've got to say. And it's kind of a demanding thing, because a lot of people tell you there's bands that'll like the music but they don't like the singing. It ruins it for them. There's a lot of bands through time, that I felt that way about that where, and it's not so much I couldn't stand the singing, it's just that without the singing, I felt could I had a better fit, you know, and you can kind of get away with a lead guitar player that's not the greatest lead guitar player on the planet, and a rhythm guitar player who's just pretty solid, and a bass player that he's kind of in the pocket, and a drummer that might be a little sloppy, but he does his thing. That you can kind of get by. A singer,
Hmm.
if he's not on, even if they're not somebody that's doing a type of music, like even in punk, people think, oh, punk's just screaming, or like a lot of metal. And there's a certain level where, yeah, you're screaming, but you have to know at least how to control tonally everything's come out of your mouth in relation to the rest of the band. Because whether it's screaming or singing or opera, if you're out of key, it doesn't sound right.
Hmm.
That's part of the universal language of music is that everybody knows what out of key is. Everybody knows what a sour note is. It's
Yeah.
you know
Something else that just occurred to me too is like multiple people could pick up the same guitar and they're gonna have a different approach to playing it, but every voice is unique. So it's like you're the only one who can use that instrument.
right.
And it's you have to figure out how to play that instrument differently from anyone else's voice. I guess vocal lessons are probably a hard thing to teach because I mean, basically, the teacher's just going to have to understand what type of voice you have and teach you accordingly, I guess.
Well, teaching in general, over the years, I've found that it takes a whole lot more than just knowing the topic. You got to know kind of how to teach,
Hmm.
you know, like I can teach guitar pretty well. Music theory, I'm not going to teach too deeply advanced into, but a lot of that's you pulling straight from a book anyway. So, you know, especially with things like music, that's almost the physical side of that is like anything, even a sport. You have to put in the time personally, you know. When I've taught guitar in the past, like, parents would ask me about teaching their kids, and I'd say, look, I could charge you 50, $100 a lesson or whatever every week to babysit your kid for 2 hours while they sit and do the same thing over and over again in front of me. Or I could sit down and teach them a handful of chords and chart them out a few scales and teach them the basics of how to practice and then come see him in 2 weeks and see if he's really starting to move, because if he doesn't want to do it, he's not, he or she, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They're not going to sit down and do it every day. They're not going to have the
Hmm.
passion for it, so you're wasting their time and your money by having me just sit here and go over it, and when the kid doesn't really want to do it.
Do you think that kind of like it makes me think of like prodigy musicians? Can you force learning?
For well, you can
I guess that's yes, you can.
well, learning is a force because you are shaping, somebody's mental state. It's kind of like discipline in martial arts. You put a kid in martial arts early enough, they're still buck wild, but they're still going to be kids. But there's a level of achievement that they're going for, and that's
Mm.
kind of one of the reasons why you can go for lessons 2 or 3 times a week for something like that because it's a physical exercise that usually involve other people and it's a full bodied thing. The thing with playing instruments is everything that you can learn, well, everything that you can be taught, you can be taught by somebody, but you can take that and continue to practice on your own. You get a metronome. I mean, you get on YouTube now and have a backup track running, to play against. So you have a time. You don't have to have a teacher standing there clapping until you stay in time, you know, but it's the discipline. Now, there is a certain level of, like you're saying, if your child shows an aptitude at an early age for something, and you want to instill that more deeply, you start sending them to constant lessons to train them into a daily routine where it just becomes part of what they learn.
Kind of like you're teaching them more so just discipline and to be a certain place at a certain time to do a certain
Right.
thing for a certain amount of time, more than you're actually teaching them.
Right. And then you have an instructor that's basically just making sure that they go through their lesson and play,
Yeah.
And, one could argue what that gets down to how you raise your child. And I personally want a child, I want my children to decide what they want to do. And then I will help drive the effort and the discipline behind it. But I don't want to just, I don't want to tell Busyfoot, this is what you're going to do. I want him to say, I really want to do that. And then I'll say, okay, if you really want to do that, then we're going to sit down and
I wouldn't want to
that.
tell them this is what you're going to do either. That sounds dangerous.
It could be.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying though. It's you want to teach him to have the ability to learn the things he wants to learn.
Right.
You're teaching him to learn.
Right.
Yeah. What are you most afraid of?
Um, Probably my son having to grow up without either me or his mother.
Yeah.
One or the other of us, or both, or really anybody closely around him. Um,
Yeah.
but fear to me is, well, to me, fear is what the opposite of love is. So being afraid or cautious or scared of something, I'm scared of pain because, well, everybody's scared of a
Of
certain
course.
pain. I mean, some people like a little bit of pain here and there, but I don't know anybody that's, I don't even know sadists that like to smack their knee on the coffee table.
Yeah. The most intense level
Yeah,
of
the
pain,
most,
closely followed by pregnancy.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. It's like I'm a masochist up to the point of knee into the coffee table.
Yeah. No one wants to be cue hauled. I don't care how kinky
Right,
you are.
right. So, just other than the basic animal fears,
Yeah.
now I don't have things set. I fear starving to death, but I'm not afraid I'm going to starve to death anytime soon.
Sure.
It's kind of like I see these things about, I grew up spending all this time being afraid of things that I never realized I would never have to worry about quicksand kind of stuff, because quicksand, it exists, but it holds you, it won't drown you.
Oh,
Yeah, you can't drown in it. You get stuck in it.
seen plenty of movies where
Right.
that would disagree with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, it's absolutely, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But, so it's one of those things. I mean, I fear the interstate.
yeah.
I absolutely fear semi trucks doing 95 miles an hour in
Mm.
the rain right next to me.
Not really a big fan of travel at all, really.
Not a big, you know, not really into flying.
Mostly we just travel through thoughtscapes.
It's
Travel through thoughts.
I've been to enough places in here that,
Yeah.
I go to other cities and it's kind of,
Hmm.
especially nowadays, a lot of the cities I used to visit, like Orleans when I was younger, now you go places and it's just like going downtown here, except it's there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. New Orleans is a nice exception, but like when I was in New York City visiting my family earlier this year, I was just thinking like, man, I miss Nashville. And then, when I'm here, like, we shit on it all the time. And it's like that's what you do with your city. That's just
well,
what you
that's the
do.
thing is I only do that to you, Nashville. I moved to Music City.
Right.
You know,
Where are we right now?
we're technically in Music City.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, yeah. I mean, it's got its problems, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. The more places I go, the more I understand that.
Right.
You told me a long time ago that this place it's a vacuum. It's got a pull. Like you
Yeah.
can't really, it's hard to get away from this place permanently.
Hmm.
Like you can leave for an amount of time, but for some reason people tend to come back once they've been here.
People that travel, they're like, I've traveled for years, going state to state to state, and they get here and I've been here for 16 years now.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not even about there's opportunity here, but it's not even about that. This
no,
is something there's a lot of power
yeah.
in this place, a lot of old energy.
Hmm.
You can feel it. Have you ever had your heart broken?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got probably several songs that
Hmm.
deal with that. They're just not so emo
Yeah,
that so dark.
more shoegazy.
Yeah, more what the hell's Neif talking about here?
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I think the feeling of what people call heartbreak, that utter disappointment.
Mm.
Actually, not too long ago, I did a little video of me. Oh, I know. I found a video from probably about 10, 11 years ago, and I put it on my IG, and I did a little AI video freak out with it. And that was a song that I wrote, and that's how I describe it was, it's about losing faith in your love, you know.
Losing faith in your love.
Yeah. And that can mean, the love that you have for something or somebody or somebody else, your love, your lover. And I think that's really what, you have different levels and of things that can occur in any kind of relationship, whether or not it's that intimate or whether or not it's just, family or
Mm.
brotherly or platonic or whatever
Yeah.
it is, every person you know is a relationship. And depending on your closeness or your level of trust, how you trust that person, how you know them. Because if you know a person to be kind of shady, they might be cool, but you're not inviting them to your home, you know. And it's not that you don't trust them, it's that you can't trust them at that level, you know.
Or you do trust them.
You trust them to be, somebody real shady.
It's like I
You
know
know,
you well enough to know
right,
that that's still trust.
right. But you,
Yeah, yeah.
but when you it like a romantic relationship is the easiest way to describe it because it's very easy
Mm,
for most people to understand that. It can be, but it can be, you can look at it with business relationships, band relationships, project relationships, things like that, where when you share a passion with somebody about reaching a goal, and if you think
mm.
about it like running a marathon or running a relay race, you know, that has no other competition. You're just strictly trying to run it to get to the end. And somebody, just stops running or simulate it however you want. They keep falling down. They keep slipping when they try to they get upset and throw the baton, and leave you hanging there.
Mm.
You know, it's, it's a certain level of,
Disappointment.
yeah, it's a disappointment. It's like, I understood it to be this way, and you agreed with me on that to some level, but now,
It's like
these
I
things
thought we had an
differently.
understanding.
Yeah. And then, you can get into the nuance of things where it's like, and it's easier to look in retrospect because people will tell you, and I've been in relationships where, they outright told me, that if I'm not a good person, and when you're, when you have that much adoration for somebody, when you're that, you know, about them, you think that either, oh, that's just what somebody says, you know, that's a defense mechanism. Oh,
Mm.
it's whatever. Or I'm not that kind. I'm not, but the easiest thing to do is you go back to whatever their prior experiences are. You're like, well, I'm not any of those other people that you were with. So it's different.
Mm.
And even from that point, you're kind of like, but if you went through all that before, why do we have anything at all if you don't feel that it's better? So you kind of start questioning whether how honest somebody's being with you,
Yeah,
and that's one of the major things is, but at the same time, we can be stubborn and somebody can be telling us directly, and we're just not going to accept that because, you know,
yeah,
we feel we know them better, or that, this is a lot of times it's a reoccurring thing. You know, somebody says it's not going to work, and you're like, all right, fine, whatever. And you say, all right, go. And then they, well, I can't go, because then, ball in your court kind of thing. A lot of people don't like to be the one ending things.
my friend Lynn says when someone tells you who they are, believe them. But um, like with the caveat to that, that people aren't always aware when they're telling you who they are. They don't know that they just told you that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, People say more than they realize if you're listening.
Well, it's
People
like,
are people are an open book if you pay attention.
yeah, I mean, that song itself, there is actually even a line in it that says, I've heard you tell me that I should run, but I know when you think of this, you come undone.
Hmm.
And it was me saying, look, I know they have told me you should run from me, you know,
That's tough.
yeah.
It's like, what do you do with that?
And, There's
It's like
a
it's like choosing to be the fool, knowing,
right,
yeah.
that, and there's I know when you speak, you think no one hears, but I've endured your silence for so many years.
Hmm.
Because when somebody's when somebody really cares about you, because it's usually not a question of, somebody's got to be a vicious person to, get involved with you and actually not give a shit about you. They can act in pretty hateful ways, but that's usually because they're that impassioned about it. They're not
Oh, yeah.
flagrantly saying fuck off.
That's why hate's not the opposite of love. Fear
Right,
is, because
right,
hate is still passion.
right. You wouldn't bother wanting somebody to change you don't give a fuck about, you
Right.
know. So, and but the thing being is when and I've dealt with this when I was younger too, you feel like you're not heard, but you don't speak up to those that are close to you,
Hmm.
or you'll speak to somebody else about things, you have a
Yeah.
friend to discuss things with, but you won't
I've
communicate your issues directly with
I've noticed
somebody.
that too with people, and I try to be very conscious about that. Um, and even if it's an uncomfortable thing, like to address it with that person,
Right,
because it really does only it makes things worse not to. Like however bad that conversation is going to be, it's going to
right.
be worse if it doesn't happen.
Well, and then I mean, to take it from that in business aspects and bands, yeah, I've had my heart broken left and right in that, because it's, you put your faith in a project
Hmm.
and somebody else's passion for it, and you think you got this common goal, but and unfortunately a lot of times it'd be substance use that would
Yeah,
destroy the
and that's
situation,
heartbreaking too.
right,
Yeah,
because you watching somebody you care about in general,
wasted potential.
yeah, they start destroying themselves. So then you step out of even the project that you got going and saying, look, now this is a friend of mine that's poisoning themselves.
One of my favorite artists in town has this issue.
Yeah,
One of the most talented motherfuckers in this city.
yeah, it happens. It happens.
There's a trade-off with the artist, which you you something I've always respected about you is you have a lot more discipline than maybe anyone I know. At least most people, I would say, on average, most people, most Americans, let's say. Maybe
That's
not,
kind of scary.
you start, well, I mean, it's true though. Um, like, fuck, what were we just talking about right before that? Um,
Substance.
Substance. Yeah. You've been sober how long?
Well, then I put the bottle down.
Not, yeah, you haven't drinking and
I haven't drank in 23 years, I think, something like that.
I mean, you and I both know that that's one of the number one substances that gets abused.
Oh yeah,
And like I'm no exception to that. It's hard. That's a hard thing to do.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's alcohol is physically addictive. It's
Yeah.
not like a lot of other drugs.
Unlike other drugs, it's in front of your face all the time too.
Right.
Like it's not like you got to go looking very far for it. Like it's there anytime you want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's entirely an internal thing. That's not
Yeah.
one you can like just isolate from. Like you have to deal with that here. Um, and like there's a lot of our friends that have these problems.
Mhm.
whether it be alcohol or other substances. Do you have any advice for anyone trying to kick a habit?
I mean, it really depends on the habit.
Yeah.
I mean, nicotine is probably the biggest bitch of them all.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, God forbid anybody's strung out on heroin or anything like that. But
Not to brag, but I haven't had nicotine in 7 months
okay,
outside of people handing it to me,
right.
like a blunt or something. But
Well, that's the thing is, it's one of those that I used gum, but you have to actively. I was tearing the gum and down in the smaller pieces and wrapping it with regular gum to actually wean. And when you read the instructions of those things, it doesn't tell you anything about weaning
hmm,
off. It just tells you to just chew it for this long and then stop. And I'm like, nicotine is a addictive chemical. If you're going to wean off of it, you have to actually wean off of
hmm,
it. So that's how I did that. Alcohol, I just stopped. Working out's really good because it
replace it with a better habit.
yeah, that's one of the better things. A lot of people do that, and it is a better habit to have. It actually helps, you know, drive toxins out,
Yeah,
and you end up getting the runner's high. You start getting adrenaline rushes, and you
I
start
love
getting
that. When
blood
I
rushes like
when I
that.
go to the gym, I usually just run. I get very euphoric. I've noticed like usually the first 10 minutes are the hardest, and then after that, you're just in the motion. It's interesting. When you look back, particularly on the times you've had your heart broken and it was a romantic thing, when you look back now, because like when we're young, something can be like earth shattering,
Hmm.
and then you get older and you're like, that actually wasn't a big deal.
Right.
When you look back now at this point in your life, was it love?
Um, I think on that level, there's always a level of yeah, there was love there. Now, whether or not the other person understood how to love somebody,
Yeah,
there's different levels of that. I don't know that I look back and think it's not. Obviously, I don't feel like it's as big of a deal now because I try not to have regrets. I wouldn't be where I am right
sure.
now if everything in my life hadn't happened the way it
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
With most of them, um, well, and that's also the thing is there was relationships that I knew they weren't really designed, if you want to call it designed, to be a long lasting thing.
sure.
There wasn't thought of like marriage and kids at the end, you know. It was just kind of young rock and roll. But really, some of the more heavy duty ones that I thought might go somewhere, in retrospect, I dodged a couple of bullets, you know.
Hmm.
And like I said, I don't really hold regrets because I wouldn't be where I'm at now.
Yeah,
And
this is kind of a cop out, but like literally, you couldn't have done anything different. At least that's the way it appears, right? Is like
right.
the dominoes have already been knocked
Yeah.
over. The chips are gonna land where they land.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
but that's obviously that's kind of when we start talking about philosophy, that's kind of a different that's a different
Right.
thing.
Right.
We kind of have to look at our past as if we could have done something different in order to avoid pitfalls in the future. But in a literal sense, everything you've done, you were always going to do, and everything that you're going to do is already been done. You've already done it.
We have all been here before.
Yeah. Have you ever been betrayed?
Oh yeah.
Was that heartbreaking?
Um, well, the thing being is in like heavy duty relationships, probably at the time I could be, oh, I was, that bitch betrayed me. But that's another thing that's kind of on levels because a real betrayal to me is much more of an act, you know, somebody just, dropping the ball or dipping out of my life or whatever like that, or
Betrayal's a lot more intentional.
yeah, has there's been times, especially in the scene and running a club and things like that, running businesses and what have you definitely had to worry about people not just separating from what you're doing, but truly betraying what
Mm.
you're doing and trying to sabotage it, you know.
Yeah.
And, that was a club thing when there was a few clubs running around that were kind of underground scenes that we would have to worry about somebody trying to badmouth what we were doing to try to get people to not come to our club so they'd go to their club. And
Like that issue with a certain club and Reddit,
oh yeah, yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah, and it's
That's
like,
sabotage.
yeah, and it's like I knew way back when also, where you put your energy is, that's what people, karma. Oh, what goes around comes around. It's not really what karma is. Um, but it's the energy you build from your deeds. And when you put your energy into, you know, bad situations are going to occur, you're going to cross paths with people and your visions are going to clash.
Hmm.
And separating yourself from that is not a bad thing. You know,
Hmm.
it's refusing to separate yourself from it. And people are like, well, fuck that. I'm getting away from that.
I guess that is
But then they
healthy.
want to revisit it,
Yeah.
with negativity, and they're drawing negativity because that's where they put their thought and they put their energy there,
I've been there.
you know. And it's kind of like I want to say with in the music scene, you can see it a lot with bands. It's like, look, if you spend half the time on your own image as you do trying to dog everybody else's image, you might not have to worry about dogging other people's image same
You'd
way,
be as successful as the people you hate
Right,
are.
right. So
Yeah.
that's one of those things, I have a sense of humor, a very twisted and crazy, drawn, far sense of humor, as you know, but that's exactly what it is. When it comes to art, I try not to criticize, I try not to make a real determination about good or bad. If I don't like a song, I don't like a song. And I'll say I don't like a song. I'm a nice enough guy that I'm probably not going to tell the artist that's a fucking shit song, dude.
Yeah.
But because I mean that truly is an opinion.
I'm really quick to judge art I don't like. Like this
Yeah,
is bad. This is not good. And it's funny because I'm not particularly known for having the best taste.
yeah, it's funny. Well, that's the
So
thing
it's
is,
especially funny.
I have over the years, especially, I've had to come up with ways to ways to credit people for what they do because I mean I've been inundated with so much art
Yeah.
You know, so much music, so much live music, so many different bands and types of bands, and visual artists and media artists, and just, you know, that it's like when I describe like circus rock or circus metal, you know, I have a lot of descriptions for these things, and I'm not trying to poke fun at it necessarily, but it's what it comes across to me as, and I can appreciate, you know, that's why there's so many bands that I can appreciate what they do, and I can respect and recognize their ability, and think they're phenomenal musicians, and they're a really tight band, and they're solid. I'm just not into what they do.
Kind of like when you tell me my stuff is campy.
Um, well, that's
Asshole.
well, that's poetry, so that's kind of different. You know, it's because writing is something that's even harder for me to judge on. You know, I'm usually judging on is how I hear it. You know, if something's campy, it's how it sounds. You know, you're reading it out to you, you're like, it's kind of campy in my brain. Now, if it's
Yeah, it's not a
said,
problem with my words. It's a problem with your inner monologue.
uh-huh, yeah,
Yeah.
basically. But you know,
My words were perfect.
I mean, that's where we get back into the I'm not gonna say things are good or bad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, you know, my inner monologue just didn't translate that.
Sure.
Got a bad read.
See, like I know that to be true, but I'm still gonna even after having this conversation, I'm gonna continue to say art is bad or good.
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things
It kind of
where,
goes without saying that that's my opinion.
well, there's definitely a lot of songs where I'm like, turn that crap off. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
That's garbage,
Yeah.
you know. But
You don't really need to preface that with, in my opinion.
right,
That's obviously your opinion.
right,
Yeah.
because you know, if somebody
Because
wants
you
to
said it.
argue the point with me, I don't really like that because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of let me dog this track and tell you exactly why I think
Yeah.
it's garbage.
Yeah.
You know,
You're not paying me for this.
right?
I'm not
Because
producing this.
that's when you find out exactly how picky I am and
Yeah.
how bougie my tastes are when it comes to things like music.
You shouldn't have asked.
Right.
You said something earlier about um, the working towards a common goal.
Mhm.
Would you say that every relationship is having a collaborative goal in mind?
Mm, not, I mean, you could esoterically, because I think the problem with some of the relationships I had been in, some of the romantic relationships I'd been in, was the other person would overanalyze it constantly. They
Mm,
constantly want to discuss the relationship, and you know, and it seemed like they felt like that, but we didn't really have a goal. We weren't planning on getting married. You know, a lot of times this would be other musicians, you know, which is, it's not that musicians shouldn't be together. It's that when it's more of a business thing. It's that when you have a couple, and we know of several couples that they're a band, it's a lot easier on a certain level because it's just them doing that and being maintaining control of that, you know, along with that. And I'm sure they got their own issues, but when you have two artists that do something separate, it's really hard. That's
mm.
why I always say one rock star per family,
I knew that was coming. I was waiting on that.
you know, and
One rock star per household.
right, it's really hard to give each other enough press,
Sure.
you know, and
It's like who's the support character?
right, and you end up with um well, you can end up just over, and you know, the goal being somebody's success. Well, somebody's going to have to decide which is which, you know, and it takes somebody deciding that they're not as good as the other person, or the other person is more commercially appealing
Mm.
or more likely to be successful, and a lot of times, unfortunately, ends up being the opposite.
Like they all think they're,
Well, no, the person who steps back knows more,
mm,
you know,
mm,
and the person who is put in the front is just more appealing in some way, you
yeah,
know. So it can be that can be a challenge in that. That's why I don't like to look at relationships as being goal driven, you
mm.
know. Um,
I see what you mean though. With business, with a band, with I would say a romantic relationship, there is this common idea that's agreed upon. Might be a little different between like a parent and a child because it's like clearly you and I do not have the same intention.
right,
It's sometimes at opposite ends of this. And romantic relationships could be like that too.
right,
But like I think not at their foundation.
right. Well, that's the thing is, I mean, all relationships have that level of, you can look at it, we're raised, especially in this country, to be more accepting, to be more of a melting pot, to be more, we don't have to agree, but we can still get along, which
Mm,
unfortunately now is trying to get pushed out of the way. Um,
yeah,
but the whole idea with that is, like religious zealot, it's like, oh, I met this person and they're a really nice person. They're cool. We hung out, everything was groovy. And then I found out they were a such and such that my religion absolutely despises. So I
yeah.
can't, you know, and, it's the same concept that you have an agreement when you meet people in general in a social situation, and it's a social norm.
Mm.
When we go hang out at a bar, you know, and watch a band play, everybody there kind of has an agreement with each other that doesn't have to be spoken, that we're not going to make really aggressive physical contact with one another. You know what I mean?
Although that happened to me the other night, but go ahead.
Right.
I got a story.
And, nobody's going to throw anything at anybody. Nobody's going to do a lot of things like that,
Yeah.
and there's times, like you're saying, that people step out of that social agreement, and it's not just you, but usually the whole place is like, what the fuck, dude?
I was at Rosie's Twin Kegs karaoke bar with um, a lot of our friends, and it was reaching the end of the night. A lot of actually one of my friends was witness to this. Everyone else had gone already. But this guy got up there to do karaoke, did his song. I think he did like fucking Guns N' Roses or AC/DC or something.
Right,
Shit faced. Finishes the song by taking the little like the thing with the words on it that are coming onto the screen,
right,
takes it just hard as fuck, just slams it on the ground, it shatters, takes the microphone off the stand, throws it as hard as he can, gets off stage, and I'm just looking at him like, what the fuck? Comes straight up to me and puts his hands on me.
oh
I've
shit,
never seen this dude in my life. And I'm just like, this is happening. I'm just like, this is completely blank expression. Like,
right,
what are you doing? And then two other dudes came up and snatched him. I think they were his friends.
right,
But then we all kind of like followed them outside. And there were like 15 of us standing around just not doing shit, but just staring at him.
Right.
Like
Right. And that's the thing is,
that's the people that go there are very much like they're there all the time.
is that out east or is that, 'cause there's a
Um
Twin Kegs
twin
over in South Side. I don't know if
um
there is.
Rosie's is like 10 minutes from here.
Okay.
I think there
Whatever.
is another Twin Kegs. That might not be Rosie's Twin Kegs
Yeah.
though.
Right, right. So who knows?
There's like a dealership next to it
Yeah.
and a Euro place.
Oh well.
Anyway, yeah. Um, we'll wrap up here in a second, but I don't even want like really want to talk about it because it gives a sense of undeserved like relevance. But do you have any predictions for next year's election?
Mm,
Like you and I know that it's we're all just being lied to, and this is
yeah,
a game.
really no. I mean it's yeah, it's gonna be an interesting episode. Um,
Yeah, interesting episode.
you know, timing is everything because if we even get there, there's
Right.
also the idea, but I've heard this idea come many a times before when somebody's about to, go into their last year that there's basically a law stating if you're in war,
Oh,
you
you can
can't
remain in power.
you remain in power, you can't elect
Did
anybody.
you see the Siri thing about that?
Yeah, I've seen that before, but for years that was said about Bush, that was said
Mm.
about Obama, that was said,
That was said about Trump.
yeah. Well, I mean, everybody said Trump was going to start World War III, but I tried to explain to everybody World War III was already won by China. You
It's
got to
already
remember,
over.
it's not World War III, it's World War IV that we got to worry about next.
Yeah.
China leveled over 40,000 U.S. factories without dropping a single bomb. They won World War III.
Yeah.
Everybody was just asleep and didn't realize it.
Yeah. So you don't think there's going to be an executive order Supreme Court thing where Biden stays in power?
I think that's always some kind of little weird scare thing. I don't think that's going to happen because they're very, we haven't really had a war. Everything that's gone on, they don't like to call them wars. They call them conflicts and this
Yeah.
and that. They don't want to call it this or that war when it involves us.
Right.
So that's not so much what I'm worried about. I really don't think Biden's going to get reelected. I'm wondering if they're even going to elect him in the DNC to have him run again.
The problem with that is I don't think he got elected this time. So it's
Well, what
like,
I'm
yeah,
saying
I
is,
don't think he's going to get elected
I
either,
don't
but
know that he's going to run on that, kind of level. They've just got to find somebody else to put in his place.
I mean,
And
really, Michelle Obama's the only.
I keep hearing word of that, but
That's their only viable
she needs,
play.
if she's going to, she needs to go ahead and come
Yeah.
public with it soon because if she waits too long, but nobody's going to trust that,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. All of a sudden,
So,
their chef will go missing, and he'll die in a foot of water. Olympic swimmer.
oh Lord. And then everybody's worried that, I mean, even the DNC is worried that because Trump's gained popularity. Everybody thought DeSantis was going to do something, but he's dropped in popularity. You don't hear hardly anything about him now.
Yeah. It's, like since Obama, conservatives in this country have been very untrusting of the government.
Mhm.
And then Israel, uh, which has one of the best defense forces of any country. Uh, some radical terrorists get in through a gap in a fence, and now all of a sudden, conservatives are pro-government again
Right.
because Israel ally, and
Well,
it makes
conservatives are in general pro-military.
yeah.
The other thing is Christian conservatives are very much, yes, we'll be at peace. We don't mind the Jews because they're cool with us. But as far as I know, all the Muslims want us dead, you know. And so that sentiment just it's still there. And I mean, it's a hard argument, really, on, it's just like when people bring up all these old scriptures about either, the Jews and the Torah, things like that, stoning women to death or stoning, this and that, and things in even the New Testament they bring up. It's the same thing as people pointing at things in the Quran that talk about, you know, oppressing women and this and that. And it's the same concept of there are people that believe crazy, radical shit that's written down. And there are people that take those words and don't believe them on that level and have a different outlook, you know, all the way around the board. And unfortunately, we know we know a lot about the bad because the bad news is what sells. And unfortunately, people who want to do bad things may not necessarily have started off wanting to do bad things, but it's easy to talk them into it when that's how they gain fame because they know that's what makes the news.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, look at music. I mean, I see a lot of stuff now with hip hop, you know, people talking about, and I mean, it's done it for years, especially through the 90s, it it amplifies violence and the degradation of women. And a lot of it's very, it's very bad messaging. But the thing being is, when you listen to old 80s hip hop, that's positive message, it sounds campy. Nobody,
What is this whack shit? Get this
yeah,
the fuck out of my
yeah.
face.
Don't sell crack on my neighborhood. Nobody really wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, everybody wants to hear, I don't slung 90 pounds in your neighborhood. It's
Reminds me of the get down. Get this disco duck the fuck out of here.
right. It's one of those like, well, people like that kind of entertainment. The problem is that this country full of kings has decided that entertainment is a living.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
if I could just watch cool movies and play cool video games all day and get paid for it, that would be awesome. Really, no, wouldn't be.
Yeah. Anything you do for a living becomes a job.
Right. And, you know, all it has to do is tricking yourself and numbing yourself into that mind frame. Whereas it's just the opposite. When you actually go do laborious jobs, you reconnect with yourself physically and it makes you aware,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah. Intense exercise or intense like physical labor um is very rewarding.
It's just like even playing music, why you get wore out.
Yeah.
It's an intense physical thing. You have to do it. It's active. It's not a passive thing. You're not watching somebody else do it.
What I was saying about how conservatives are pro-military and therefore pro-government right now is I'm like, oh, y'all just switched the narrative again. It's like we don't have two parties here.
Mm-mm.
We have one party that is somehow still
We
really
have
effective.
we have a bank.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have a bank. Everything else is all talking heads.
Yeah.
You know,
The entire world's probably like that. There might be some places like Somali pirates, you know. I don't really think they're part of the status quo, but it like there aren't a lot of places left where it's not part of this global banking control.
and the amazing thing is it even reaches there because the whole idea of wanting that kind of money is driven by that. Because a bank is what says, you too, poor man, can have these shiny watches
Mm,
and drive these nice cars,
yeah,
and we'll help you get there. You just let us hold your money, let us hold your earnings.
man, yeah. And it's hard to exist now without giving them your money,
Hmm.
without like there's only a few lines of work where you can just pile up knots like of cash.
Hmm.
Like most of your employers are going to want you to have a direct deposit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And something we were talking about the other day is overthrowing our corrupt government is unrealistic. It's not going to happen. But we can at any point just decide to not obey certain laws. For example, who do we know that doesn't do illicit substance? I mean, I don't know anyone. I don't know shit.
Right. Well, it's one of
But
those.
you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, it has to get broken down.
Yeah.
It has to be so defunded that they start having to pull the money and the funding out of all this excessive stuff
Yeah.
to where it's just direly what is needed, and that's it.
Right. And it's like we could stop paying taxes in theory, right? But not if not if I have a direct deposit
Right.
and not if I want to buy things from a store.
Right.
So that leaves what like
Well, that's two different taxes.
right, that's
Yeah.
sales tax, income tax. So there's only a few taxes that are actually easy to not pay,
Right.
which would be okay, if you're self-employed, you have to be we were talking about this the other day. You have to be making some serious coin before the IRS is going to come after you.
Right. I mean, you go, well, that's the thing is if you got your own business, they'll give you 2 years of a loss before they'll set you on an audit.
Yeah,
But owing them a few $100 is not that big of a deal.
right.
It's when you start getting into the hundreds of thousands that they're
Yeah.
like, hey,
So there's a lot of people that are self-employed that kind of skate under that and be all right.
yeah,
But
I
that's
mean,
that's only again only a few
that's
lines of work.
well, and that's also the thing. All they gotta do is start sending you notices and stuff, and most people are gonna be paying it.
Right. Yeah.
And so somebody working down at the office, they go in, they got a list of numbers, and they call you up, sir.
So
Shows here you owe 500 something bucks, blah blah blah.
so income tax is situationally avoidable. Sales tax is unavoidable.
Yeah.
Property tax is avoidable. We could just not pay taxes on that.
The problem with that is if you don't, they will seize your land and auction it off.
Oh, well, there's that then.
If you have a home, you're paying a mortgage on it, that usually goes through your mortgage.
Do you think there's a way we could get everyone in the like what if half the country decided they were going to stop doing maybe not even just that, but like something else?
Well, that's the thing is you would have to,
How could you organize people on such a wide scale?
well, that's the thing is it's only going to affect them if the people who have a lot There's a bunch of poor people not doing it. They're like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
And if all the power is in just 1% of people and you can control that 1%, it doesn't matter if you can't control the 99%. Because if you can control the 1% that has everything, then you won. So you're right. You're right. It's not about the masses. It's about specific people taking a stand.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah.
We got to get Elon Musk to start refusing the pay taxes.
Yeah. Elon, come on, rabbit hole.
Stop paying
Talk about it.
taxes.
Did you see what he just did with the New York
Oh
Times?
yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
That was
Oh, yeah.
badass.
Yeah, he repeated himself too.
Yeah.
Couldn't make it any more clear than that.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, Alice, look up Elon Musk. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
It'll be the first
tell
thing come
Disney
up.
to go fuck yourself, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming. I appreciate
It's
you.
been my pleasure. It's been a long time since I've been in this seat.
Yeah. Thank you for everything you do for me, for Alice, for this city, for the world.
Well, I'm gonna keep trying to do
Yeah.
more.
Okay, we'll see you next week, Alice. Tell us what you think about this. We're in a new space now. See you next week.
Bye, Alice.